Amazing.
Okay, we should be live. Hello.
Fantastic. Oh, hey everybody.
Hey there. Okay. Yes, we're definitely live. We're all pulling through.
That is fantastic. Yay. So let's start. Hi everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on our very special online tour of the Animal Crossing Diaries exhibition. Really glad that you could join us. Obviously, due to a few limitations on the amount of people you can welcome on an island, we couldn't welcome you all on this virtual island, but we are streaming from it, so to speak, and really excited just to tell you a little bit more about this project. So the way it's going to happen is that we're going to trying not to get distracted by my animal self waving her flag. The way it's going to happen is that we are going to have a little presentation of the exhibition and its main themes to start with, and then all of us in the programming team are just going to have a little chat in general around Animal Crossing, comfort games like Animal Crossing, and playing games during the pandemic. A bit of a common experience over the past year and a half. But first, I'm going to do something very sneaky and get everybody to introduce themselves. Let me try and see if I can do a tada reaction. Probably not.
I can do ta-da. There we go. Ta-da.
Yes, there you go. So Leah, you've started with the sparkles, so I think that means you have to introduce yourself first.
Okay, I will go first. I volunteer. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name's Leah. I am the Learning Officer at the NVN in Sheffield, so I do all of the learning programs, all the workshops and activities that we do, and I'm also a very big Animal Crossing fan, so that's why I'm here. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Leah. Mikey, hiding behind his umbrella, the only one who came prepared for this island weather.
I looked at the forecast beforehand. I don't know, you guys have access to weather apps on Animal Crossing. Hi everyone, I'm Mikey. I'm a curator at the NVM and also at the Video Game Heritage Society, which is our subject specialist network to do with game preservation. I also worked on the oral history project for the exhibition, so really excited to talk about that later.
Brilliant. Thanks, Mikey. Emily.
Oh no, has Emily frozen?
Hi.
Oh, Emily's back.
Yes, sorry. My internet's a little bit patchy, so just bear with me. I'm Emily. I'm one of the curators at the NVM. Whilst I wasn't involved in this project directly, I'm definitely reaping all the benefits. And so I'm just really happy to be here and talk about pandemic games and also just about Animal Crossing in general, because I'm a little bit obsessed.
Yay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And I'm Claire. So I'm Program and Collections Manager for National Videogame Museum, and I've been leading on the Animal Crossing Diaries project in terms of this project in which we've been obviously collecting and then presenting via online exhibition all the stories that have been sent to us about playing this game over the past year and a half. I should also add that we've been, Emily's credit has also been helping us make this online exhibition visible via our gallery as well. So there's a kind of online and on-site component happening there as well. So yeah, thank you very much everyone for introducing yourselves. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a general presentation on what this exhibition is, what this project is. You're kind of stumbling across it and thinking, this is cute and colourful and pastel. What's it all about? And during that time, if any question pops in your head, definitely put it down in the chat, and then we can have a look at answering a few of your questions. But essentially, so Animal Crossing Diaries, who said, is a project that really started with this idea of having a bit of a time capsule for all these different stories that have been happening over the past year and a half. It really started with this realization that the launch of the game coincided pretty much exactly with the start of lockdown, at least the first lockdown in the UK, and ways in which people use the game to navigate the pandemic, both in terms of lockdown and different stages of social distancing in different ways. So we have our collecting project, which we started by an open call. So in terms of collecting all these stories digitally, whether these are pieces of music, written diaries, videos, images, and its online exhibition is pretty much the result of having a selection of the stories that were sent to us between December 2020 and April 2021. What we really wanted to do with this project, and the way we wanted to present these on the online exhibition, was really finding a way of making that experience accessible to everyone, whether or not you play or whether or not you play Animal Crossing New Horizons. I should also add that before May 2020 of last year, I had never played Animal Crossing before, and I hadn't picked up a game in a very long time. So it's definitely one of my first games and kind of re-experiencing that in new ways. But for many people, obviously coming across the website, either you've played before and submitted a story, you know a little bit about it, or not at all. But something that we all have in common is that we have experienced the pandemic over the past year and a half, and is that many kind of recurring themes and things that we've been trying to do. So bearing that in mind, we've tried to assemble, regroup these different stories under specific themes that everybody could relate to, in a sense. So thankfully having a little browse through the website. So first one is keeping a routine. So the idea behind that one really is that idea that the game, during a time of unpredictability, great upheaval, and lots of emails of people telling us that we were living in very uncertain times, there was something that was quite predictable and reassuring about being able to go to your island and do kind of everyday tasks. A lot of Animal Crossing Animal Crossing New Horizons is kind of based around that kind of slow way of playing, where you don't necessarily have a goal to work towards other than making sure the villagers on your island are happy, and also making sure that you have a pretty island that you can live on. So many people, these tasks every day could look like tending to your flowers, could be just trying to embellish your island, just kind of slow everyday things that people could rely on. So it was really interesting to receive lots of different submissions from people in terms of navigating a very, very unpredictable real life everyday situation via game in which they knew they had a routine to stick to, sell things to the shop, show Blazers their fossils, etc. Blazers has definitely been a model, a style icon for us all at the NVM during this time. So it's also been interesting because many people have sent us their literal scans of their literal diaries, in which they were able to record day to day. We've also received time lapses and videos of people being able to just record these day-to-day experiences. Definitely linked to that is also the theme around making your space. A time in which sometimes space was quite literally limited in terms of lockdown, in terms of places you could go, things you could do. People really kind of shaped these islands in ways that worked for them. That could be either making the island a second home for themselves. It could be, in a sense, traveling when travel bans in real life were in effect. That was, for example, the case for a person who recreated an entire medieval village within their game because they were based in the US and couldn't travel to Europe during that time. Also somebody, that entry to space that I was looking for that was on the screen, who essentially created a launch for their film within the game because they couldn't create something in real life. So lots of different ways of doing things. I'm going to remind everybody just to move around a little bit in the game, actually, because I've just remembered if you sit still for more than 5 minutes, you log off.
Well remembered.
We're just all kind of running around and emoting behind this this really well put together screen. So that's one, and I think it really reflected that idea of Animal Crossing, as a space you go to rather than only a game you play. It kind of became that place of refuge for many people, and also kind of in a sense became a way for people who were also stuck with players of Animal Crossing in lockdown to be involved in the game. One of our entries has somebody who started playing the game on their family TV, and then everybody could join in and take part in that experience and help them construct their island. So there's different levels to that for sure. Love Mikey playing the maracas behind. Love it.
Have to have some sort of soundtrack in the background.
Exactly. So important theme as well was representing yourself, especially during a time in which you can't necessarily go out and literally see yourself or represent yourself in other spaces. Being able to have a space in which you could express your identity, express different parts of your personality, and also kind of use the island perhaps to do different things you couldn't usually do in terms of access. I think one of the powerful entry for us was Emmy and My Island, which the player essentially used the island as a way to be able to explore, to just have a space to see people that wouldn't have been possible in real life due to Emmy, due to chronic illness. And I think asked a really, really important, powerful question around continuing to have these spaces post-pandemic for everyone, really. And I think it tells a really important story around making those different issues visible and raising awareness. We've had a lovely entry as well around Bollywood and being able to essentially create a way of sharing your cultural heritage in the game at a time in which travel was quite limited. Lots of different interesting things around that, and of course, in the event of lots of things like Pride being cancelled, the game was definitely a great space in which you could express that in different ways. I think kind of linked to that, a really important theme is also sharing creativity. A time in which lots of things were closed down, museums were closed down, there was lots of things that weren't necessarily possible. The game provides a bit of that blank canvas so that people could just express themselves in different ways. There's a really beautiful entry called Stitching in Pixels, in which a fashion designer, essentially not being able to necessarily have a studio and do fashion shows in real life, they use the game as a way to, that's the one, use the game as a way to be able to show their digital, their fashion design skills online as part of Animal Crossing. And I think that's something really interesting about that, and kind of how it ended up being linked to their career and led to other collaborations with brands. And I also love the way in which it's presented. But sometimes we also have the game inspiring real life creations, like for example the papercraft entry, which there it is, in which the contributor was inspired by Animal Crossing and to create a whole kind of travel journal via papercrafting while in lockdown. So lots of really, really interesting, beautiful examples sent to us. And I think the most powerful one, and the one we can all, in a sense, relate to, is this idea of staying in touch. Really, the idea that during the pandemic, the game has been a great way for people to visit one another's islands. Sorry, I'm being distracted by Emily's brilliant little cosplay in the corner. Has been an occasion for people to visit one another's island, to host events on their island, and really find a way of trying to fight against that feeling of isolation that lots of people have been feeling. So we've received a great amount of different stories that can show that. I think one that's really beautiful, it's called Games in Game on our website, is a person who essentially learned how to play Animal Crossing and created a whole island of games for neighborhood kids to be able to play in. First for Halloween, and then for Christmas, just because there weren't in real life events available at that time. I'm also thinking about Nintendo South Wales, independent group for fans of Nintendo, not affiliated to Nintendo, who created a lot of different events within the game, such as the Shutterbug Off, which is essentially a way to have a virtual insect photography competition in the game, but also a Bells Party, in which they could kind of play different games on the island and just kind of have a way of interacting and staying in touch. Lots of birthday parties, lots of family members, sometimes getting the game just so they could visit younger relatives, and date nights as well, parenting via the game, and lots of really different incredible examples. And we really invite you after this to just kind of browse through all of these and have a look. We also have a random entry button if you want to kind of just pick one at random and just decide what you're going to find. We should add that there have and there we go. That's that actually is one of our curators, which we didn't know when the entry was sent in, and I thought, is that Mikey? And it turned out it was Mikey.
Well, it's curator adjacent. It's my partner's.
Exactly.
I
exactly.
He
didn't just send it in and hope it got the
No.
That's not how we curate things at the NVM. It is worth saying that some entries have a little pop-up before you click on them that will tell you that there is some slightly more sensitive content that is addressed. We have received a few memorials of people who have lost loved ones and have found a way of honouring them and sharing their memory on their islands. So we wanted to find a place these stories and honour these stories, also find a way in which we could frame that in a way that people could kind of prepare themselves for that content. It's been a difficult year with lots of trauma and lots of different layers around approaching death and grief. So we wanted to kind of explore that in different ways. Essentially, it's really been incredible to see the amounts and the range of different entries that we've received. And we tried to also create a timeline that could reflect that and sometimes organise some of these themes in a way that maybe deviated from a timeline of very big events that happened in Animal Crossing done by brands and organisations, and focus more on those personal stories. We have some moments that are devoted to obviously big milestones in terms of protest, in terms of pride, but also in terms of people throughout the year organising their own events and finding personal milestones and moments of joy and comfort. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little snapshot tour of the exhibition. We should also add that we are still open for different stories. If you're looking through the website and thinking, these are great experiences, but they're not my experience of playing during the pandemic, you can send these stories over to us at Animal Crossing Diaries at thenvm.org. And that will be a place where we can receive your entries and add them to our collection. Which kind of brings us on to next steps. Really, is once this exhibition is over, it's not actually quite ever over. It's going to stay online and people can consult it. And in the same way, anybody who asks, anybody can consult the collection, the Animal Crossing Diaries collection, as part of our permanent collection. So you'll be able to come to the museum and consult what's within our core permanent collection and just add your stories to it. So we're hoping that it will become a growing archive that people can add to, and hopefully a project that won't end once the pandemic does, that we can continue adding to, so we can share all of these stories. I think I've chatted enough for now. I'm going to let Mikey touch upon a really important part of our project, which is the oral history. So Mikey, I'm going to let you chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me sort of first say that was a really great summary of all the unique aspects about the project. It's such a wonderful sort of collection of stories that are so unique in their individuality, but also how well they give a snapshot of a moment in time. And I think that's what this project does really well. Really captures that strange period that we all experienced in such emotive ways. And it's wonderful that we're keeping it going and bringing life to this even like after the exhibition's gone online. And I guess part of that work is the oral history project, which is sort of a wider extension of the diary entries that we've had already. And so we've interviewed 4 people for the oral history project so far. Firstly, there's Wayne from Can Gaming, who is a streamer who did their a baby gender reveal through Animal Crossing. It's a really unique sort of pop culture moment in sort of streaming and using the game to convey a quite significant life event. We had an interview with Tiara from the Animal Crossing New Horizons Fringe in Melbourne. A really fascinating dive into how to curate a quite large arts and culture festival through Animal Crossing. And sort of on that theme, where I think Sarah Cole's even in the chat. We've got Sarah Cole from the curator and creative genius behind the Wood Sorrel Garden Gallery. That was a wonderful conversation, which definitely went on longer than the allotted 40 minutes that we were initially. And we just had so much to talk about. And using, the sort of limitations in a way of the game as a place to work and do these really amazing exhibitions. And the final interview so far, I want to stress so far, because I'm hoping that we can expand on this oral history project as we go, is Nintendo South Wales, Paul from Nintendo South Wales, talking about their Shutterbug Off contest and the Bell Party. Again, a really fascinating look at how communities were able to come together in unique ways. Because the Nintendo South Wales community were, very close and would always do these events, and then suddenly to not able to see each other in person, and Paul was one of the main creators of these events, and it was really touching to see how grateful Paul was for like the ability to have this outlet, this creative outlet to make these things for the community. And it was really wonderful. So, at the moment we've got these awesome snapshots of the interviews on the website. Hopefully we're going to be able to have full transcripts and audio in the future, and hopefully also expand on talking to more people as well. But I'm really pleased with how that's come out so far.
Thanks very much, Mikey. And yeah, so I think that concludes our little tour of the exhibition, and now we can kind of move on to just having a little chat. And also, if you have any questions in the meantime, definitely pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure we can get to them. So thanks very much for guiding us through the website, Leah.
No problem. I can switch back to
now we're all kind
screen.
of like, we're just all randomly emoting behind. Brilliant.
I totally lost where I was as well. Yeah.
There we go. Here we are. Brilliant. So I'm going to kind of kick us off with a little chat really about playing during the pandemic. A lot of alliteration going on. I think I'd start with kind of maybe a little program team recommendations in terms of not sure which story to start with, or which one would each of you recommend as one of your favorites, because it was very hard to choose a favorite story because they're all amazing. But Mikey, what was your one of your favorites?
I mean, we've said a few already so far. I'd be remiss if I didn't re-shout out Superlou's entry about the alternative to Not So Normal. But yeah, that's my legal obligation.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really liked Jodie Crisp's turnip sounds in the sharing creativity section. I absolutely love both those videos, and I love the way in which the open call allowed so many creative entries to come through. That being like one of them, and I just also love the sort of messiness and the dissonance of it.
Yeah.
All we need to do is stick a nice, simple drum beat over it, and we've got a top 40 single. That's all I'm saying.
Amazing. Leah, how about you? Because yeah, you've been playing for quite a while as well. So
I have. I got it on release day, which was I think 23rd or something of March 2020, which was perfect timing. And I've played I think most of the Animal Crossing games before, so I was like really looking forward to this one. So yeah, really enjoyed having it for company during the pandemic. But one of my favourite entries is the papercraft one. I think I did show it earlier. About recording the experience of playing Animal Crossing in a diary. It's something that I would do in normal life. Like I collect tickets and things and put them in my diary, so it's something that's like really familiar, and really wish that I'd also done it for Animal Crossing and playing Animal Crossing. And I just love all the pictures of the pages from that papercraft diary. I think they're so beautiful, and there's a few other diary entries, sort of like physical diary entries as well, because I really love those, because something I really enjoy doing is putting stickers in diaries and using highlighters and having a nice excuse to buy new pens. That's my favourite thing.
Never need an excuse.
Yeah, oh no, I don't. I really don't. But it was great. I think those were great to see. Yeah, they were definitely my favourite.
Amazing. Emily, how about you?
For me, it was definitely looking at, there's a couple of entries that basically try to reproduce art galleries within Animal Crossing. I know we've mentioned Wood Sorrel Gallery already, but that was definitely a big highlight, because it's not just like plain reproduction, it's actually like investigating the space as a different place to exhibit. Which I just think is really genius, and just something really original. I really love it. And that's definitely like the second I got Animal Crossing, the museum was the first thing I started working on. So yeah, it's I feel an affinity there.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, there's also the Big Moon entry, which is a person who has imitated Andy Warhol, like other different modern and contemporary artists in on their island and in their house. So that's definitely worth checking out as well. So it's fun to recognise. Also, imitating like in the video they sent through, also having like contemporary art performances. It's really clever. So I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, it's been really interesting to see those entries in parallel to lots of museums using Animal Crossing in different ways. Think about Museum of English Rural Life, that was doing a lot of things at the start of lockdown. It's always really fun to see. I think my favourite is still probably one of my favourites. Don't have a favourite. It's probably 1 year of playing, because it really kind of encapsulates for me like a big spirit of the project. Person who did a video time lapse. The kind of time lapse photos, screenshots, and videos from their island over the span of a year, and diary entries, which they started doing, before, even before we launched the open call. It said we were doing the Animal Crossing Diaries from the very beginning. In March, April, started doing a handwritten diary, a journal of their experiences, and I think that was something that was really fun and inspiring to have a look at, really, and I really enjoyed kind of just looking through, especially since it shows the ups and downs. Sometimes it's I don't know if I want to go on the game anymore, or things are getting, it's kind of fluctuations in terms of mental health as well, and I think it shows kind of honest kind of reflection of this year. But thank you very much. So it was fun to hear people's kind of recommend stories. Oh, we've got Luigi joined us now. I also have a Luigi outfit, so I'm going to try and find it and not make a fool of myself by forgetting how to change outfits. But I thought, it'd be nice to have a little bit of discussion around general, kind of more general themes around Animal Crossing. I think the two main ones are really kind of comfort games and kind of and other pandemic games that have kind of emerged as really really popular games during this time. So thought that it would be quite interesting to maybe look at the way in which how do you all feel the pandemic changed the way we engage with games, or what kind of games do we play? Do you think we've turned more towards comfort gaming in general, or is it kind of a mix of different things we're looking for in games?
Good question.
I'm Luigi now, by the way.
There
can only be one.
No.
Luigi's in a hot dog.
Exactly. Just name of one. Yeah.
I don't have the thing. Oh, I feel like I need a more outlandish costume than my walker. I think that's a really interesting question in terms of considering what people play after the pandemic. I mean, off the top of my head, the example that comes into mind is Among Us.
Yeah.
As being like a communal game, and also a cultural meme and phenomenon. And I do, would I have gravitated towards playing that with my uni friends on Zoom if the pandemic hadn't happened? Probably not. So that's really interesting to think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It definitely feels as though there were kind of different seasons of games, and obviously Among Us during a particular time was almost that feeling of countering that cuteness and playfulness of Animal Crossing was something that was quite intentionally a bit darker. And lots of people joked about it being that stage of the pandemic where people kind of sometimes did literally want to kind of take out their feelings. So finding a kind of almost cathartic way of doing that by having imposters that you throw out of shit. But I think Minecraft was also quite an interesting kind of experience, and The Sims as well. So maybe it's that kind of return to kind of having simulations and having these places where you can do massive amounts of world building.
Yeah, I definitely had one thing that developed with my own kind of gameplay is I used it very socially during the pandemic, and to play with my family. I've got quite a lot of siblings. They live very far away. The youngest one is 10, which is the perfect Minecraft age. She loves Minecraft, so we now have Minecraft Mondays. So every Monday we play Minecraft and we world build, and we just were creating like a big village, and we did that as well as playing Animal Crossing together. So we really, really like that kind of world building creativity aspect of it, and sharing resources and visiting each other's islands. And she did get it much later than I did, so was keeping me updated with all the new things that she had developed in Animal Crossing and all the new parts of her island that she developed. And it was great to just have that as we can play a game this evening and chat, and we don't need to think about anything else. That was really helpful.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about almost a game, especially maybe a game that's maybe a little bit more kind of, you don't need to specifically focus on a plot, being a bit of a backdrop for just other conversations going on, and just being able to casually catch up. Like we're not in the middle of an intense level right now, so we can just hang out and talk at the same time on stream. Well, even though I'm having some trouble focusing, I'm just kind of making my character kind of all over the place.
Doing the Animal Crossing circle.
Yeah. What do you think, Emily, in terms of kind of a game that's kind of outside Animal Crossing, which I know you spent a big amount of time on, in terms of having an amazing island, Popile, which you have a dream address for, which I'm going to encourage you to share with people in the chat. Putting you on the spot here. But what any other game you feel kind of encapsulates that kind of pandemic experience?
The really hard thing about this is that I have literally spent most of it playing Animal Crossing, and the other game I've spent playing, I've actually probably spent maybe two other games I've spent a good amount of time on, and that is Battlefield and Genshin Impact,
Ooh.
which I think has a very similar kind of slow feel that Animal Crossing has. I think there's something about I feel like we kind of underestimate the aesthetics of Animal Crossing and of these kind of games. The design element of them is just really, really beautiful, and it's sort of like part of that is just really relaxing for the player, or I find it very relaxing. I think the regularity of it is just like one of the best things about it, because it really gives you a constant until you fully upgrade your house, and then you just are nitpicking detail by detail. But yeah, I think for me it really was Animal Crossing.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and really interesting to see kind of almost like making the game kind of fit the experience we want, right? I mean, we talked about certain experiences of the game during this past year. Some experiences have been extremely competitive, like people really kind of having kind of channeling the game in a really competitive way, which is fine. There's no right or wrong way of using the game, but the way people have kind of repurposed it to work with what works best for them. My experience of pandemic playing has definitely been Animal Crossing. Like I said, I actually didn't have a Switch or any other kind of console outside playing my PC before Animal Crossing, so brand new experience for me. Age of Empires as well, which people know I'm slightly obsessed with, but kind of having that military game as a way of a little kind of comfort zone in terms of like being able to kind of world build and kind of have military campaigns and have that in a kind of like comforting way. But also the game Hades, I will say, is probably one that we haven't mentioned so far. It's very interesting how just like Among Us is all about kind of being trapped and cooped on a ship and throwing imposters out and how that reflected some feelings during lockdown. I think Hades was also definitely that experience where you're trying to get out of the underworld and you fail time and time again, and it definitely I think had lots of resonance with lots of people in terms of that particular experience. So yeah, I think really interesting perspectives. You think the success of Animal Crossing and just maybe the general way people feel about it means that we might see more more of these kind of comfort slow ways of playing in the future? General question. Maybe I'll just kind of go towards somebody and nudge them so I get this.
I don't know. Play is so diverse,
Yeah.
and so different. Because hearing about all your different experiences of what you enjoy, I know that for vast amounts of the pandemic, like if I was playing something on my own, without context, I was playing through the Dark Souls games. So that's, not exactly a stress-free time with the frustration. But that was something that I would do to relax, bizarrely. So I don't know I think it'd be hard to predict. Because I guess massive franchises, just like something like FIFA or, these annual games are always going to have a big audience and I guess during the time that's something that you would go to. But yeah, I don't know, I think Animal Crossing is unique in the way it forces the player, I guess, in some ways to take their time.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have what's the name of the character that in the older Animal Crossing games would Resetter.
Mr.
Rossetti, yeah.
Mr. Rossetti.
Thank you. You can tell I'm not au fait with that, but not telling you to skip time. You have things are at a really chilled pace, and I think that's obviously been one of the things that's attracted a lot of people to playing Animal Crossing in such a strange time. This oasis of calm is always there for you to turn up to.
Yeah, Absolutely.
That's true.
Thanks. That's a really, really great perspective. So I'd have a little look through the chat and see if there are any questions for us. There's like lots of comments, lots of kind of thoughts around Animal Crossing and other games. Just lovely to see. Other fans of Hades. Yep, Hades is awesome. Let me see if I can scroll up and find a question. Oh yeah, that may be a good one. Can you see the museum doing another such collecting project for another home in the future, or does this feel like a one-off experience? I think this is really interesting because we've actually been having a lot of these conversations internally about Animal Crossing and about that experience of collecting experiences of play rather than collecting the game itself necessarily. And so I think we can talk a bit about that in terms of Animal Crossing and just other projects we'd be interested in doing. In terms of Animal Crossing, Mikey, you can definitely add to this because we've had many a curatorial meeting talking about this. But I think what really struck us was just the scope of things we can explore with this in terms of how the game makes you approach things in terms of sustainability. When you rock up to an island and you can just like destroy and pillage everything on that deserted island for your own gain, or even colonialism, honestly, because you're arriving on an island and kind of everybody's and just kind of like essentially taking ownership of it in a bit, and it's kind of framed as this escape to your own personal deserted island. But I think there's lots of things behind that we need to unpack. But what's been really interesting for me as well is the whole idea around gender and gender inclusion in the games and how that's shifted from in terms of different translations. Like for example, the version, the English version of the game having the option to choose the way you want to present rather than having to choose a specific gender. But then the Japanese version still keeping very kind of binary male, female ways of showing your character. So I think lots we can do in the future in terms of Animal Crossing New Horizons specifically. Any thoughts around this? Mikey, I'm going to pick on you.
You were so comprehensive then in that answer that I don't think I've got anything to add. All the things that I was going to be, and I can add to that. You kind of, but I think that's a really interesting point. The latter point was sort of about the translation between the different versions. You know, what we play is an English localized version of a really popular Japanese game, and the cultural changes and the language changes that come into play between the versions is something that I'd really be interested in exploring. And I think in exploring that one question, you then touch on all the themes that you've talked about as well with representation. So I think it's really great because we've done such a comprehensive snapshot the exhibition is already, but there's so many more interesting things that we can do with this, and that's really fulfilling and exciting to think about.
Absolutely. And I think I think we're definitely not this is definitely our first time really having a comprehensive project in which we're focusing on the experiences of people playing being more important to us than the actual game itself in terms of curation. We didn't want this to be a project around saying how great Animal Crossing New Horizons is or how great Nintendo is, although hi Nintendo. Don't take down an exhibition. It's great. We are critical when we need to be, and I think that is an important distinction between saying how valuable the game has been for people to express themselves, but also not shying away from being slightly critical of the way that Nintendo has, for example, treated political protests in the game, and kind of not really, sometimes banned specific users in ways that wasn't quite fair, which one of our entries, Stitching and Pixels, deals with a bit more. Lots of different interesting issues around that. But I will say, I think we definitely like to collect more experiences of people playing and put the put everybody else on the spot slightly in terms of any other game that we would want to curate experiences of. What would be the first on our list outside of Animal Crossing?
Oh.
Yeah, I went there.
To be fair, I probably would have picked Animal Crossing had it not been this, because I've been playing it in so many different versions for so long, and my experience of playing the game has changed so dramatically. That's a really rubbish answer, but probably maybe The Sims. Actually, I would probably pick The Sims, because I've also been playing that since the original, and it's changed in so many different ways, and it's still changing. That would be really interesting. And there's like a huge community of modders who've put their own version of the game, kind of like Animal Crossing has. There's lots of people who've made it their own, and really changed the experience for others. So I think The Sims would be really interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Anyone else?
Any thoughts, Emily, Mikey?
For me, I think I would probably, big surprise, choose a open world or an RPG. So I would probably go with something like the Fallout franchise, or Final Fantasy's open world game, or even I had one and now it has completely dropped out of my brain. That's fine. I agree. I agree with The Sims hardcore, because I think that there's a lot of different aspects to The Sims, not just world building, but also thinking about things like society and morals and representation and hardcore obsession. Because definitely about morals, because apparently all of us have tried to, endanger our Sims, except for Mikey, who is innocent amongst us.
Mikey, I don't believe that. You never tried to trap your Sim in a swimming pool.
No, it's horrific. Everyone
Unbelievable.
has to live happily ever after in The Sims, surely.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. So, I don't have much experience with The Sims, but I have. It's all been very happy families, which is maybe I need to change that.
There was also a really interesting game. I think you'd mentioned at some point before this chat, Lee, around Occupy White Walls, right? And how people have been using that as much to kind of create their own kind of their own spaces during the pandemic, or probably even before. Maybe that's also an interesting one in terms of a museum within a museum kind of situation.
Yeah, definitely there were a few real life museums as well who curated some of their collections in that, so you could use some of the artwork from their collections in your own spaces and kind of curate your own space and your own artwork. And it's really interesting to see. And that's another one where you can kind of just click on a random gallery and walk around somebody else's gallery and look at the artwork that they've chosen, and they can kind of curate it as well. They can leave comments and things like that. So that was a really nice thing to explore during the pandemic, especially because there was someone who obviously likes museums a lot but couldn't visit museums, and they were all closed, including the one that we worked at. That was definitely nice to be able to go and walk around the gallery and look at some art for a bit. That was quite relaxing, and then curate your own as well, so you could pick up the artwork that you saw from somebody else and collect it and put it in your own space. I would definitely recommend that game if you just want to relax.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'm trying to think about. I agree with The Sims, because Sims was one of my first games. Obviously set my house on fire from the first play.
Oh yeah.
Again, Mikey, can't believe you haven't tried to murder your Sims.
Right, I see that Connor in the chat has said that he doesn't trust anyone that hasn't accidentally killed one.
Yeah.
Now, I think maybe the reality is worse.
Very
I tried
sus.
to very sus. I think I tried to make all the Sims love each other with the love potions and stuff, and so everyone was all friendly with each other. So I think that's maybe more sinister.
But
But
it's
just
a little bit more sinister. Oh, I see. There's a question. What is the name of the Animal Crossing? Of this island? It's Temeshira, because it's my island. So I decided to name it after the Wonder Woman, the island of the Amazons So yeah, that's one question I just found in the chat.
Great name.
But yeah, I would say Sims would also be my answer to what we would collect next, because I think there's a lot there we can explore in terms of representation. In terms of fandom response, I think I would maybe go with The Legend of Zelda, because I think there's lots of things there where I don't necessarily know if there's a huge kind of pandemic. That's maybe one in which Breath of the Wild has actually also been a bit of a pandemic experience for me, because it's a game. It's a bit more kind of open world. You can just wander around in nature, and at a time which I couldn't travel, it had something quite cathartic about it. So I would be quite interested in seeing which kind of artistic fan responses around cosplay, around art we could collect. Maybe also having that pandemic component of how did people respond to this game maybe a bit differently in the past year and a half. Yeah, I think there's lots of interesting things around that. We've got 5 minutes left, so any pressing questions? I'm just kind of scrolling through the chat.
I think there was one about whether there was a physical representation of the exhibition in the actual museum space.
So we have anybody who visits the museum can essentially browse the exhibition on site in the gallery. We also have a little show reel of different videos, so people have a bit of a taster of different video entries, and then have a chance to look through. I tried to create a little equivalent of that on the side here, and a little archive space people can consult. But yeah, it's essentially a nice way to essentially have more than a QR code, and also allow people to have ways of accessing the exhibition in different ways. So if you go along, you'll be able to discover the exhibition in that sense. We also might have some learning activities for people to design their own island maps later on in the year, this autumn, and so that'll be a nice kind of drop-in activity as well. I love how I basically remodel the shop front of my island so it's a bit prettier and isn't just a bunch of furniture lying around. Isabel absolutely refuses to give me a 5-star rating. I think I saw a last question.
Build more fences.
Yeah. I think I saw a last question. I'm just in the Halloween corner now. I think I saw a question around will these entries be accessioned? So yes. The entries that were sent to us will be accessioned in our permanent collection, and they will be available for everyone to consult. It's worth saying that the ones we have almost 100 submissions on the website that are not a reflection of all the submissions that we've received. We might add more in the future that correspond to that time frame between December and April, in which we received these submissions. But we've received almost 300 overall, which is incredible. So we're hoping to add some more in the future, and I think this might be also a nice opportunity for me to for all of us to say thank you really to everybody who's contributed these stories, because I think there's a huge element of trust really as well in terms of sharing your story and putting it out there in the world, and I think there's something really beautiful about just being able to read through and select and share all these different experiences. So yeah, no, thank you. Any kind of last questions? Do you collect anything outside of submissions? That's an interesting question. So we have been considering actually getting some physical kind of fan works and different elements. So I think that might be one in terms of next steps for the project, perhaps in the future, in terms of thinking there's lots of kind of artistic fandom responses, and we've received a few submissions and scanned drawings, videos of paper crafting, but maybe that's one where the physical components might be quite interesting. There's also I think a very interesting conversation around merch and Animal Crossing that is a second conversation that isn't so much about the player experience but the way in which it's been commercialized. I know Leah, you have some animal makeup.
Like wearing I'm a walking advertisement for Animal Crossing with my mug and my t-shirt. Oops.
But I think there's something interesting about having a component to it that is also physical in the future. It would be quite interesting to have a look at.
Well, I intend to get my little niece involved in Animal Crossing when she's old enough
Brilliant.
as well. And
Amazing.
for Christmas, we already have some merch ready to go.
Amazing.
For
That's great.
Yes.
What I'm going to recommend, because we have a few minutes left before we forget, so we all take a party popper out and try and celebrate the launch of the.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Do you have one? I have a spare.
Oh, I have one. I can give one to you. Do I just drop it on the floor?
Yay.
There you go.
Don't know how
Oh,
to do it.
I dropped it on there. Can you stick it on? Chaos.
I got it.
Yay!
Do I just press
Okay.
A? How does it work?
Oh wait, no, I dropped them all.
I think we
Hang on, no, I don't have a party pop.
Oh, no.
It's fine. I've only been playing for a
One
year and a
sec.
half.
They're all for
This is
me.
the first.
I'll just grab
I've
one
never-
and then I'll drop the rest.
Thank you.
There we go.
No,
Okay.
this is
Okay,
working
try
out
again.
for everybody.
Right, it's the hardest thing ever. Right, there we go.
Hey.
Okay.
Okay, and now I'm holding.
Amazing.
Yeah, we're
How-
total
can we just press
professionals.
A?
Yes, I'll go in the middle and then
Amazing.
we're in frame.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
Yay!
Hey!
Yeah. So this
Amazing.
concluding our stream with a bang. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this kind of slightly experimental stream from our islands. But hope you've been enjoying. It's lovely to see all your different questions and just all the different comments coming in. Recognise quite a few people who've sent in contributions. So thank you so much for sending your stories and for making it to this stream. And this is just the part where we just have a freestyle of just running around.
Dancing, maracas,
Now we just run around.
Exactly.
This is why Animal Crossing is so wholesome.
I'll bring out some balloons. There we go.
Space.
I wish I could get in front of the camera.
There we go.
Amazing.
I'm gonna have my little goodbye thing. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And yeah, see you all soon on on the Animal Crossing Diaries online exhibition.
Amazing.
Yay.
Thank you guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.